Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us tmosso@the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. So today we're discussing a 968-piece stainless steel limited edition for 2024. This is the Tag Heuer Carrera Chronograph Seafarer by Hodinkee. So a collaboration with the well-known American watch blog. This is by Tag Heuer in the tradition of several of its watches, both Carrera and tide complications. So a couple of different watches go into this. Back in the 1940s, there was the Solunar. In the 1950s, there was the Marograph. And in 1968, there was the 2446C Seafarer, which most directly informs the design of the watch you see here. That's why the edition number of this series is 968. So in steel, it's 42 millimeters in diameter. It's 14.4 millimeters thick, and from lug tip to lug tip, 48.3 millimeters with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. You can see it uses the glass box sapphire the Tag Heuer has been rolling out for the last 2 model years, and it has the sharply angular lugs that have been a signature of every Carrera since the very first in 1963. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and it wears quite nicely. Being less than 49 millimeters lug to lug always helps a watch fit-wise. The fact that this one's actually not that thick, if you subtract the crystal, means that it'll slip fairly easily under a cuff. Yes, even a dress cuff. Remember, 14.4, but a lot of that is that domed sapphire, and the cuff will not get hung up on that. You can see down the barrel, the lugs are not over the edge of my wrist, so I think you could wear this watch on a wrist as small as 15 centimeters circumference, a little bit smaller than mine. The strap features a crosshatched pattern, a little bit like a traditional textile weave. You can see that there's some fastening outboard. It's matte finished, and there's a remarkable amount of thickness and substance to this strap, which does conform to the case, which means you can actually wear this on an even smaller wrist if you put a regular strap that had more flexibility and could pull straight down out of the lugs. That said, this is a good looking strap, and you can see that there are some pre-scored sections, so it can be cut to length for you. We have an interesting clasp design. Tag Heuer has really been raising its game in that regard. So externally, you can see a combination of polish and satin, but then we have twin trigger release rather than a clamshell or a snapshot system. And then we have this little push button slider that allows me to incrementally size in or out so I can fine-tune the fit of the strap. The case is nicely decorated. You can see we have these vintage-inspired pump pushers. We've got the Tag Heuer logo on the crown. It is a push-down crown, but as you can see on the reverse of the watch, it is robustly water-resistant to 100 meters. We have a lovely satinated and polished faceted tide adjustment control, and this allows you to adjust the tidal index right there, so you can keep track of the tides as well as the time of day when the tides are active. Now, of course, we have a chronograph with a combination of, well, let's just say, not a whole lot that's conventional. As you can see, we have a chronograph display that gives us minutes and seconds, and then, demonstrate this right here, that's about it. The complication is not actually part of the chronograph register there. That is freestanding, and that runs whether the chronograph is active or not. We have an azurage pattern on the small seconds, as well as on the lovely little roundel style chronograph minutes register, which can be useful for gauging 5-minute and 10-minute increments. If you do want to use this as a regatta timer, that's sort of the back of the napkin intention with that calibration there. You can also see that glass box giving us a little bit of the look of a vintage plexi, but it's also sort of its own thing. Vintage plexis tended not to be that dramatic, and you can see that these glass box Carreras have almost no bezel whatsoever. You can also appreciate that the indices actually insert into little slots in a remarkably contoured dial. You can see how the dial rises, and then it has a concave that slopes down towards the center of the dial. It's a really good look and upscale. It makes the Tag Heuer look, frankly, like a more upscale watch. Like, this could do battle with an Hublot no problem, both on looks and caliber. There's no shortage of luminescence, though unfortunately the complications are not loomed. The watch does not have a date, which to some is addition by subtraction, but it does feature a hacking or stop seconds function right there. Now we're going to flip this over, the better to see the caliber. So this is a Tag Heuer manufacturer movement. It's the TH20-13 automatic winding, 80-hour power reserve, 4 Hz beat rate, 31 joules, and it's got that combination of a crisp column wheel and a vertical clutch. So the column wheel, you can see, it's right at the top of the movement right there. You can also see that the movement's nicely sized to fit this case, so it's a sort of hand-in-glove fit. Tag Heuer is now a full-fledged movement manufacturer in that regard. You can see adjustments done via a combination of Edicron for fine timing adjustment, that's the gold screw, beat error, that's the silver one, and then there's an eccentric screw adjuster for very precise changes between 1 and 5 seconds per 24 hours. Again, 80-hour power reserve, and it's got a vertical clutch, which means when you engage the chronograph, chronoseconds hand starts without any jump or rock or leap forward. And in fact, because there's no additional wear and tear when running a vertical clutch chrono, you can just leave it engaged full time if you so choose. The watch has a lot to recommend it, from the style to the fit to the movement inside to the unusual history of the Tide Complication. You don't need to be a surfer or a fisherman to enjoy this watch. In fact, it's got a little bit of surf and turf, being a Carrera, the ultimate motorsports chronograph at Tag Heuer, as well as a Tide's Complication. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.